We're live.
Indeed. Well, I'm super pumped to be joined by Leslie Stevens. This is our
Mm.
first one together. I'm going to be doing a series called Movers and Shakers. It's a play on necessary salts, but I'm bringing in a guest that I really admire to talk about a topic that I think will be really easy. So, Leslie, thank you so much for joining.
I'm so excited. Honestly, any opportunity to chat with you, I'm down.
I particularly wanted to bring Leslie on because talk about the role of social media and mental health. And Leslie is an author herself. If you don't know her, she's an incredible Substack called Morning Person. Please go follow her. But she's also the author of a book that just came out. This was it?
Over
Was
the
it?
summer, last summer, last June, which I don't know, it feels like a lifetime ago, but yeah.
And I'm just so pumped that Leslie is down to chat. So, Leslie, will you tell us a little about what you do when you're not writing on Substack and you're not?
For sure. I feel like I have an entirely different identity. It feels a little bit like Severance at times because I'm either this identity of like this Substack writer and this author, and I have morning person, but then I have this secret life where I'm also working as an addictions counselor. So I'm in year four of a 3-year program to earn my master's in mental health counseling with a specialization in addictions, which is this mouthful that basically just means that I am studying to become a therapist and specializing in addictions. So I'm currently doing my clinical internship for that, basically every moment that I'm not working on Morning Person.
Well, it's kind of an amazing thing to be an author who is also pursuing this whole health. And I particularly want to talk today about how we can think about preserving, protecting, finding balance in our mental health around this field of social media. Because for my writers in my writing community, for myself, for all my friends, this is the big question of knowing that a lot of us feel very tied to having a platform to promote our work, but also the concerns about like ethics around meta and also just like brain exhaustion from being on these platforms. So I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about how what you see as some of the obstacles or the problems with using social media, specifically like Instagram, and then being on Substack, and then also what kind of boundaries have you found around these platforms? But let's start first with when you're seeing from somebody who's studying addiction, what are you concerned with social media?
Oh my gosh, so much. And it's so funny because I'm seeing people join as you're asking that question. And I'm seeing my friend Gabby, who's from my counseling program, and I'm seeing my friend Jess, who I used to work with in this industry. So I'm like, all of the worlds are colliding into this one space. It's amazing to see. The thing that really concerns me with social media, and it's something that it took me a long, hi Jess. It's something that took me a really long time to fully understand why it wasn't sitting right with me because I loved social media when it first came out. I was an early adopter of Facebook and Instagram. I adored both. I still really love aspects of it of a way to connect. We would have never connected if not for social media. I think that we first started chatting on Instagram and now, excuse me, have this community in person. So it's this space that's always felt really complicated to me and took me a long time to understand the major drawbacks. And I first recognized them in my own life when I felt like I was working for a lifestyle media company in LA, and my job increasingly became more online, more social media, and sort of building this brand and this personality of myself on Instagram felt like it was core to the job. And I just found myself in my own life. There was this point where things switched and I was living my life more for Instagram instead of just naturally capturing the things that I was doing in my life. So it's constantly thinking about how will this perform on Instagram? How am I going to share this meal on Instagram? What am I going to do? Am I going to go to Coachella? Well, maybe only if I'm going to share it on Instagram. And it was like every single thing I was doing was for this app. And so I began to understand the ways in which it was really taking the marrow out of my own life and the richness out. And as soon as I recognized that for myself, I began to understand the ways it was doing that for others. And The overall umbrella that I feel like is the thing that concerns me most about Instagram and social media is the ways in which it really takes this thing out of life. It takes our attention. It brings our attention to both as a consumer of Instagram or any social media and TikTok. I haven't even touched TikTok because I know it would be a black hole for me. Um, but it sort of takes us from this beauty and richness of living in the real world and makes it into this tiny box, which we're currently talking on one of these tiny boxes. Um, but it really, like, to me, the thing that concerns me the most is the way in which it robs us of our ability to pay attention to the things that matter in life and actually living.
Right. And when you and I were chatting over like about this, oh, we were talking about this idea that like all you really have as a writer, all you have as a poet, especially, all you have as an essayist is this muscle of attention,
Mhm,
focus that you bring the world. And I've just been noticing in my own consumption of social media, which has grown so much. I went from not using Instagram much about 5 years ago to suddenly having a platform over 100K on Instagram.
mhm,
That has just like fundamentally altered my brain and my ability to sit down and write without this like low grade hum all the time of something I should be checking, even when I'm with my
mhm.
out on a date, whatever it is. I'm always sort of like hearing that and how it comes. I think like we all see that as sort of annoying, but when we think about what the cost that is to our art,
Mhm.
because I also wouldn't have a book deal likely without a readership. So it's something we have to ask ourselves, but especially through the lens of addiction, wondering, as someone who studies a lot of addictions, do you see social media as separate from something like substance abuse, or are there a lot of similarities?
Oh my gosh, there are so many things that I want to address here because also one of my favorite poems of yours, I can't remember the exact title of it, but it's something like "Why read poetry if it won't make you rich?" And and you talk about this idea of like, what does poetry give us? And to me, it gives us this ability, this practice of paying attention. And that's exactly what attention is. It's this constant practice, it's this constant noticing. And that's what you as a poet have to do. And for me as a writer and writing about my life and writing about things that matter and working with clients, it's this um we have to always be like working to be in this place of paying attention because I don't think it's something that comes naturally. And meanwhile, we have these social media machines, but they're these quick little dopamine hits. And the problem with dopamine is that it's something that dopamine begets more dopamine. So it's the seeking hormones. So it's like you're constantly, the more dopamine that you're experiencing in your system, the more that you need. So you're constantly like looking for more of those hits. And that's why social media addiction, it's a behavioral addiction. But the only behavioral addiction that's recognized in DSM is gambling addiction. But it works almost exactly the same way where you have these variable reward pathways. And so it's like Instagram knows that, and it's by design that it's sort of giving you these hits that are going to keep you engaged for just long enough that you're going to be interested and you're getting likes and you're getting content that's interesting to you. And it's so much more engaging often than what's happening in the real world. And so to me, it's like being a person in this world means often having to sit with that tension of how am I using this platform to get the word out so that people know more about my poetry. I'm speaking for you, of course, because I don't have the talent for writing poetry that you do. But how can I use this platform to reach more people without it consuming me? And I think that that is like a constant practice.
Totally. And also for me, the question that I ask a lot as someone who
Mhm,
really sharing poems and
mhm,
it's viral, and I think I got like, several that back when you could grow on Instagram, which is very hard to do these days. uh, I would, poem would go viral, I would get a couple thousand
mhm.
followers, grow my readership, and then I was incentivized more. But I that's the path I took, and to some degree I'm so grateful for that. I also, built a community there. But at the same time, as I am looking at my second book and ready to evolve, some of the best work that I do, it's just not shareable on Instagram. So in
Mhm.
robbing us of our attention of that muscle observation, I also think it changes how we think about art, how we consume art, how we think art is what we think is good art. Like I posted a poem recently that I had written and that I thought was one of the best I had written in a long time.
Mhm,
Craft has evolved a lot, right? Since I
mhm,
5 years ago. And, it was a risky, interesting poem, and I was proud of it. And perform on social. And there was still that old feeling of like, well, maybe it's not very good. And I just think that as we become stronger writers, more mature artists, we have to this that something that is shareable on, on Substack or Instagram rather might not be the best thing that we can write, and to not
mhm.
as that metric, but it's really hard.
Completely, and I think that I so we had lunch on Monday, and one of the things that I was sharing because you were talking about this on Monday is that to me, some of my favorite poems are the ones that you have to really read and read 3 times to really even begin to understand, and you have to sit with them. But because we're, on Instagram, we're looking for, on the average for like 3 seconds at a post, the poems that have the best performance are the ones that are like quick and easy. Like there's this one that I've seen on Substack like 7,000 times at this point that I think it's like the real indulgences in life or something. And then it's this list of really lovely things, like looking at a daffodil or making tea. I'm literally bringing the two examples that I have on my screen right now. But you're so right. There are these deeper poems that just don't necessarily translate to social media. So then it becomes this game of like, okay, how do I use my platform to be able to direct people to these poems? Like it just is this constant push pull of how do we use this machine that captures our attention and makes us fundamentally and chronically less able to pay attention to drive them towards a medium that is more attention. So, or requires more attention. And also, I don't know, like how many times can I say attention in one Substack live? I mean, I'm like, this is the whole thing. Yeah.
And how do we find that balance for ourselves without sort of going,
Mhm,
without losing our hold on both our self, on our self sense of self sovereignty, and also that
mhm.
attention we want to serve? So I've always admired you as somebody who has, like, I feel like, pioneered some frameworks for authors. Can you talk a little bit about the balance that you strike, the boundaries that you put around social, and then also what your experience has been of Substack as a platform for still getting the word out, building a readership, publishing work, but maybe how that differs from a place like Instagram?
Totally. So I think that one of the most difficult things about Instagram is that it's this sort of 24-hour cycle. So when I started working for this lifestyle brand in LA, oh my gosh, it was like 8 years ago now, 9 years ago when I first started there. And within my first few months, they launched Instagram stories. And so all of a sudden, like there used to be this expectation that you post one in feed, as long as it's a beautiful photo, if you're holding a cappuccino, like it's going to get a lot of likes. And then overnight, it became this thing where it's like, oh, you have to be posting constantly and people are consuming constantly. And within my job and within my work, it I was really like, I got completely consumed by this machine because it was sort of this fun challenge at first. And then I just realized the ways in which it completely robbed me of my ability to live my life. So by the time I left, and I applied for my master's in addictions counseling at the same time I worked at this company because I was just feeling so lost. I was like, what do I do? I've been completely consumed by this machine and I'm part of the machine. I'm seeing the ways in which it's impacting people who are the most popular on the platform. And like, we can't even make our way out of this machine, and we should have the most perspective on it. Um, so basically, I started pursuing my master's, and at the same time, I basically was like, I'm done with Instagram. Like, I was just so ready. I was so over it. I haven't had it consistently on my phone for about 3 years now. Like, I usually keep it entirely off of my phone. Um, and I'm really grateful to Substack to be able to do that. So basically, at the same time that I deleted my Instagram, I left my job in the week before starting my program in addictions. I launched my Substack, which I had been like, secretly plotting for months to launch it. But for me, the barrier and the boundary that I set is that I don't do any of the social media that requires this 24-hour cycle, mostly because I know that it pulls me in so quickly. Like anytime in the past 3 years that I've even started posting on Instagram a little bit, I'm immediately already thinking of like, how do I like it just it's so fast. It's such a quick addiction for me. And so I really like Substack as a media because it's inherently limiting. Like
Mhm.
people don't like receiving a million emails. So I'm only sending 2 emails a week. And so that creates these sort of like this this medium that I only have to work in twice a week. And at the same time, one of my weekly issues is every Sunday I post sort of photos and little updates from my week because I love having that personal touch point still. So it's, just to basically share parts of my week, but not feel like I have to be capturing everything. And I think that that's really important. So I'm trying to think of how to word this, but the best thing that I can think of as an example recently. So last week I went to see the Grateful Dead at the Sphere, which was so fun. I haven't even written about it on my Substack whatsoever. I'll probably share photos of it this Sunday. But the experience for me was truly amazing. It's a band that I adore. The visuals of the Sphere were unbelievable. And I realized while I was there, I sort of took the time to recognize every time I was in amazement. Like, there were so many times where something yeah. Oh my gosh, and your name is Cassidy, that's so exciting. They played that at the show that I went to. But there were so many times that I just felt like I was just in complete rapt attention, and I was noticing that around me, people were often taking out their phones at those moments to capture it. And so, in my own life, like, I didn't get a single photo of the interior of the Sphere, which after the fact, I was like, "Oh, it would have been, like, kinda cool to have a photo of what I saw," but at the same time, I remember it so vividly because I was making the effort just to pay attention to what I was seeing. So, I think that if I had still been on Instagram, I would have been feeling like, "Oh my gosh, I need to be capturing all of this, and look at how crazy this is, and this is gonna get great engagement," but because, I've been able to create, create this Substack where it's not dependent on me showing like this really cool shit that I'm doing. I don't have to be capturing that. So that was sort of a long-winded response, that probably got so far away from the first question that you answered or that you asked.
Substack being potentially a more viable platform. And I'm not like, this is not sponsored by Substack. I'm just trying to look for ways that we can all emancipate
I had
ourselves.
to download the app in order to have this conversation, which
Right.
probably shouldn't be saying, but that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Or I like the idea that at least there's a platform, because Substack is still social media, but at least there's a platform that allows us to slow down the cadence. Because
Mhm.
I'm app and I'm totally with you. Like it fundamentally changes my relationship to the world when I think about my vulnerability, when I think about my life, when I think about my experiences as currency. And I just don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to live in a way that I'm always looking for content. Like I want to be.
Mhm.
Oh, and I left corporate America where I was a copywriter and I was a content writer, to do something different. So I think we have to really interrogate how what these platforms are asking for us. I also like to write long form on Substack and have more room. So I think that's a nice way
Mhm.
either. Instagram is off your phone, is that right?
Totally off by phone. But I do occasionally check in on it on the desktop, and I'm looking like because my computer, you can't see it, but my computer is right behind where my phone is currently propped up. I do still check it once in a while on desktop, but for me, that feels like a boundary that I'm able to uphold because I don't find myself going to it that often. I check it maybe maybe 5 minutes for the days that I'm working on Morning Person. And that's really so I can check up on people that I like. And it's not this automatic, like, oh, I'm, flipping my thumb up and I can just see it. But also, I wanted to say that I feel like you do, and I'm curious to hear how you feel, but I feel like you do a pretty good job of maintaining a boundary with Instagram, where often no, the content that I see you sharing, it seems really intentional. Like, it seems like you're often going to Instagram to share an experience, you're talking about what's happened to you, but, in the time that I've spent quite a bit of time with you offline, and I've never once felt like you're like, "Oh, I have to make sure I get this, or I have to get this." Like, we went to lunch on Monday, and I was the one who was like, "Oh, I wanna get a photo of this for my Sunday edition." But it didn't, that was not something I ever felt that you were doing. So how do you find that balance?
That's such a great question. I mean, I don't feel like I'm not an aesthetic person on Instagram. That's never going to be an option for me. Like I've built my stories are just shitty photos with, a weird experience. Like yesterday I had I had an endoscopy and a colonoscopy at the hospital,
Double double.
a double. And I was telling Leslie, I was like, yeah, I like fascinated that I went live on Instagram during the procedure, and I was like so stressed out when I woke up. Like at no point is my brain thinking about like get a photo of this so you can talk about it. It's more that I want to be like I try really hard to only post things that are valuable when I post on social media. So there's not a like a real time must capture content. It's like I'm never going to have a beautiful photo to share with most things. I'm going to have a story. So for me, it's more about like cataloging what I call tiny tenders or glimmers, as Pam Houston says, moments that I want to remember. And I write those down usually in my notes app. And then I find some shitty photo that I can post on Instagram. But I think giving up having an aesthetic Instagram liberated me from a lot of pressure. That
Totally.
I also use, again, unsponsored, but I use Brick, which is the
How does that work? I keep seeing people talk about it. You do look like you're on QVC right now.
yeah, for Brick, but I have helpful when I use it. Basically, once you're bricked, you like tap your phone to it, and you have downloaded on the app what apps you want to block. And so, like, if I leave the house to go for a walk and I tap my phone, then I can't access any of those apps.
Oh, that is cool.
So even when I go to bed, a lot of times when I'm in like a good mental health space, I tap it, and then I can't lay in my bed in the morning and just doom scroll. I have to come downstairs to tap it. That's one boundary
Mm.
I don't know if it's enough. I'm getting very close to being like you where I want it off my phone. So that for me it's not so much posting, it's about the draw of like, well, if you don't know what's happening on in the online conversation, you're not going to be as relevant. And it's just taking away from me right now too much. But I would love to know if you could talk a little bit about if Substack I kind of came to Substack as an Instagram refugee, basically like as a woman who puts work out in the world, I was like exhausted by just like being vulnerable on a place like Instagram, which is such rapid consumption. And there's not paywalls, and there's, comment sections can just be terrible. Still can happen on, but I was attracted to being able to sort of paywall some of my content and also potentially find maybe a kind of reader, or a different kind of reader. So can you talk about the Substack audience versus Instagram? And I know that you went paid pretty early on. You want to talk a little bit about that and how that changed intimacy around what you share and don't share?
It changed everything for me. So I was working for this lifestyle blog that had an enormous readership. And so I was writing, almost daily posts for this blog. And it really felt often like there were certainly readers who I recognized, and we did enough in person events that I knew certain people and I knew certain commenters in person. So there was that connection. But it also felt a little bit like I was putting a piece of my soul just off into the internet. I really didn't know who was reading it. There were definitely people who were hate reading it, and it just felt a little bit gross. Like there was definitely an issue often with the comments or on hate blogs where I just felt like I was getting torn apart. And part of that is because there is this really strong reaction to lifestyle media, which I can sort of get into, and that's a whole other side of things. I have an interview with a really interesting researcher named Brooke Aaron Duffy, who researches specifically female trolls of lifestyle blogs and sort of the intersection of like feminism and expectations on women. But that's a whole other side of things that I became really fascinated by while working in that industry. But for me, one of the reasons, so I've I paywalled Morning Person from the jump. And a big reason for that was that I really wanted to be able to me, it was more important for me to create a smaller community where I felt safer sharing. And it has absolutely become that. Like, I really feel like there is this little safe space on the internet where I can share really vulnerably. There's literally nothing. The only thing that I don't write about, there are two things that I don't write about. I don't write anything that talks about another person in a way that I feel that they would be uncomfortable with. So, for example, my boyfriend is an incredibly private person. I've never shared his name, a photo of him, any real identifying information on Morning Person. And anytime I write about him, I'm like, he's reading every post before it goes live just to make sure. And he's never asked me to change anything, but there's just a real consideration understanding his boundaries around that. The second thing is just anything that would make me feel unsafe, like sharing too much that somebody could, I don't know, harm me in some way, because that's a risk of being a woman on the internet, which is scary. But outside of that, like, truly there is nothing that I won't write, and a huge part of that is because I have this paid community of people who read, and I feel like that's also part of why I felt safe going live. I was like, "Oh, I just feel like we have these good communities of people who want the best for us." And anytime I meet readers in person, I'm so floored by how engaged and interesting and supportive they are, and that feels so different from Instagram. Like, Instagram, it really just felt like, I don't know why people are following me here. Like, I there was just, it felt way more vulnerable and way scarier. Instead of writing for this community of women, it's primarily women. I do have some men who read Morning Person, especially as the Substack machine also sort of like generates more and more readers, and I feel like there are more men that I've had in my audience than I have before. Um, but yeah, it feels safer to, to be able to paywall. And to me, one of the huge reasons for doing that is that coming from lifestyle media, I knew that I didn't want to use any affiliate links or sponsorships. That was just really important to me. I think that on the one hand, affiliate links are a really great way for people to be able to generate an income from their writing. But because Substack offer this opportunity to have this paid subscription, I just wanted people to pay for what they were getting. So it's like people pay to subscribe because they know what they're reading, they enjoy the content. Where to me, then I just didn't feel right generating revenue from getting people to buy things that I'm probably not even buying myself. And I wanted all my recommendations to always feel really genuine. Again, I enjoy, I keep chatting. I just feel like you're asking me a question that I'm just like off to the races.
Stuff. I mean, something so powerful about this idea of there being intimacy and exchanging an email address that you cannot replicate on Instagram.
Mhm.
Like a follow feels such a different level of buy-in than actually like people who join your Substack really want to hear from you generally. Now, of course, there's like optimized things like notes and recommendations and stuff that you're going to get some
Mhm.
people exploring, but most of the time it's people who really want your content. So for me, the waters just felt a lot warmer. Someone
Mm.
had to, struggle with what to share, how much of myself to share, and also just being able to take more risk as a creative with my audience. I published an essay that was about like quirky things, quirky phrases that annoy me and why they should annoy you too. And it was the experience back where most people got the joke. Like I wasn't trying to be a tremendous asshole to people. I wasn't actually saying some phrases like, brekkie, shortened breakfast, or avocado.
But I love saying brekkie. I'm so sorry.
Right?
It's
Well,
okay. We can.
maintain this. But I remember putting like on that on Instagram and people just being like, people really trying to cancel me over this thing I had written that was like so clearly a joke. And so there's also a different
And
understanding.
also not that serious. Like, I'm okay being friends with someone who says breakfast, and I'm sure you're okay with me saying brekkie.
Yeah, like having to explain so obviously a joke and that I don't
Mhm.
share was so funny because people on Instagram, there's this different culture of kind of like popping in and out and really wanting to almost like argue. It's still
Mm.
back, but I just found the relationship to a piece that was trying to take a risk a lot different. And so I think also as I'm thinking about my own evolution as a writer and an artist, I just want to be on a platform where I have more permission to actually take those risks. I know our time is also gone, but maybe if we can just do a quick couple of questions
And I'm
about.
happy to keep chit-chatting. Also, I wanted to just touch on something that you were saying too, because I do think the other thing about Substack is, you mentioned this earlier, but the fact that it can be long form. So there's this room to write things that are so much more thoughtful than you could write in even a long Instagram caption or share on Instagram. And like in 2 weeks, I'm working on a post right now that's I operate my therapeutic orientation is existential. So I think a lot about death and dying, which is like not something that's really covered on Instagram, but it's something that I'm constantly aware of and really fascinated by the ways in which like we cope with the concept of mortality and how we live our lives according to that and what that looks like. And I'm working on this piece for Substack on it that like is would how would that ever perform on Instagram? Like and what would I share? And because it's something that's so much more thoughtful than just an image. So it allows also for this exploration of completely different things than I would ever share on Instagram, just because there would be literally no way to.
Totally. I love that point. And can I ask you, like, what are your thoughts around being an author? We're both out here trying to keep writing books. I know we both
Mhm.
are, or all of our living sort of on platforms of readers. So, what do you think about using Substack instead of social media? How did that go for you when you were writing your novel? And said your name, the name of your book wrong earlier. It's yours.
You're safe here. Let me like grab a copy and hold it or something.
Not your
Now
not.
it's my turn to be on QVC. Here she is.
Uh,
Paperback's coming out this summer.
what's that? Hardback.
Paperback is coming out this summer, and she's a cool cover.
She's.
Just saying.
I always want to say you're not safe. Here's the title of the book because it's such an ominous, creepy book. Beautiful, fun
Mhm.
dystopian thriller. So definitely check it out. But how was that experience of your safe year putting that mostly on Substack? Because at that point, you migrated away from Instagram. I know you still have a follow some, but what did that look like?
Yeah, so and oh my gosh, when I was first talking to my publicity team about like how I was going to share my book, I was just like, I just want to get the word out. Like, I want everybody to read this. This is something I'm so proud of. It took me 5 years to write. I love this book, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start on TikTok. Like, I'm just going to do it. This is going to be great, and it's going to be awesome. And like, I literally like I downloaded TikTok for 5 seconds and I was like, "This is never gonna I can't. I just physically cannot do this." So, I posted a little bit on Instagram. I posted the entire week of my book tour, which you were part of. Joy and I chatted in LA. I don't know if anyone here saw that, but it was brilliant because Joy asked such thoughtful questions. So while I was promoting the book, I was on Instagram, but I really feel like most of the movement for the book and around sales on the book came from Substack because I do think that the community that I have on Substack just like understands me more, honestly. Like I'm writing so much more vulnerably. I've shared a lot more about the process of publishing the book. It just feels so much more like there's this group of like, I honestly like, there's this group of girlfriends who just, like, support me in the same way that my, like, in-person friends support me and are like, "We totally get you, and we wanna read what you're writing," where on Instagram, it's like, I don't know anything about your writing, I just know that sometimes you wear cute outfits and you post selfies, so there was just sort of a disconnect. But I feel like Substack was really valuable, and it was the entire reason I was able to go on book tour, which I don't know if I've even, like, overtly shared that, and oh, hi, I love Olivia, and she's an amazing writer. And we met through Substack. But, one of the things that I realized is that publishing companies don't really send writers on tours anymore, but because of the engaged community that I have on Substack, they were willing to take a risk and say, like, we think that people will show, and they did. It was freaking awesome. There were over 100 people at the New York launch, which was amazing, and you saw the LA room. So I think even just like having that depth of it just felt like my readers on Substack were such champions of this book. And I'm currently in the very slow process of working on book two because um, this is such, again, I can't shut up, Joy. I keep getting really excited about the questions that
Please.
you're asking. Okay. Um, my second book is like really different from my first book, and it's not quite as plot driven in the same way. There's a lot more character development. I'm tying in a lot of things that I've learned as a counselor into the second book, and it's just the process of writing it is a process that does require like really slow devout attention in a way that writing You're Safe Here, because it's so plot driven, I just felt like every morning I could sit down and write it, and it was fun and it was exciting, and I it just kind of went. And and so I do find that it is more difficult because I am writing these like it's difficult to code switch from writing, about my life or writing nonfiction for Substack to writing this piece of fiction. And so I'm sort of navigating that right now. And part of it is just that all of my time is taken up by school and my internship. But I'm really excited and we'll see sort of how that shapes up.
Yeah, I've been not it's not been great. It's not been perfect. Like dedicate one day to the new book and then like one day to Substack,
Yeah.
another day to my writing community, my business. And I almost find that I need a full day to just like switch my brain fully into this other genre or into this other mode because I don't seem to be able to do it in chunks of time. Are you the same way?
Yes, majorly, and that's how I've approached school and Substack. One of the things that I'll also say, and this is what I did with You're Safe Here and plan on doing with my book, is that Um, the things that require the most attention are the things that I have to do first thing in the morning. So basically, I think because Substack, even though it is this longer form than Instagram, it still has this sort of dopaminergic energy to it, where it's like it's quippier, it's shorter, it takes less of that, like really, I mean, except for this post that I'm working on death and dying. It requires a completely different part of my brain than something like writing a novel does and getting into that meaty part of it. So, I find that I'm able to switch as long as I start with the book in the morning, like, as long as I start with sort of whatever is immediate. And when I'm working on these, like, really in-depth pieces for a morning person, I'm working on them first thing in the day. Like, I can't do anything else that's, like, fast moving or else like my brain it can't it's so much harder to rate it in.
Totally. I am the same way. And I love that so much, like restructuring your time and your day oriented around the thing that is the most priority because my brain is the same way. I have to hop to another call, but Leslie, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you all to everyone who joined us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We will do lots more. If you're not with Leslie, go follow her on Morning Person. Thanks for holding up my book.
You're
Sweetheart.
so good. You guys are so good.
Girls supporting girls, writing. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And yeah, follow Leslie at Morning Person. She's such a great one to subscribe to. Take care, friends. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Leslie.